My name is Thomas Riley. I've been a priest at St. Mary's Church in the Lower East Side of New York. But before that, I was someone else. Someone you probably wouldn't recognize. I think God has a peculiar sense of humor. He had me spend years on Wall Street before calling me to priesthood. At the time, I didn't understand why. Now I know. This is the story of how a casual encounter saved more lives than I could ever imagine, including my own. It was September 2008. If you followed the news, you know exactly what that means. The banks were failing, people were losing homes, retirement accounts, everything. The lines at our church's soup kitchen doubled, then tripled. Desperation hung in the air like a thick fog that wouldn't lift. I remember that Thursday morning clearly. I had been hearing confessions since dawn. So many broken people, so many shattered dreams. By noon, I needed air. Central Park had always been my refuge, a place to clear my head and speak to God without the formality of church walls. The autumn leaves were beginning to turn, painting the park in hues of gold and crimson. Yet despite the beauty, there was tension everywhere. You could see it in people's faces, in their hurried steps, in their avoidance of eye contact. I was walking near Bethesda Fountain when I saw him, a man in an expensive suit, standing at the edge of the terrace looking down at the water with an intensity that made me stop. I've counseled enough people to recognize that look. It's the look of someone who has made a decision, a final decision. I approached slowly. "Beautiful view, isn't it?" I said, keeping my voice casual. The man didn't turn. His hands gripped the stone railing so tightly, his knuckles were white. "Please leave," he said without looking at me. His voice was hollow, mechanical. "I'm Thomas," I said, ignoring his request. "I often come here to think." He finally turned, annoyed at my persistence. That's when I recognized him. Michael Harrington. His face had been on the cover of Fortune magazine just last year. The Golden Boy of Goldman, they had called him. Now his firm had collapsed, and he was front-page news for different reasons. "Father Thomas," he corrected himself, noticing my collar. "Even better. Has God sent you to save me?" His laugh was bitter, broken. "Actually, I think it was my cramped office and the need for fresh air," I replied. "But I'm happy to listen if you want to talk." "There's nothing to talk about," Michael said, turning back to the water. "It's all gone. Everything I built. Everything I am." I didn't respond immediately. Sometimes silence is the most powerful tool we have. After a minute, I simply said, "You're still here," he scoffed. "Not for long." The directness shocked me, but I didn't show it. After years on Wall Street, and then in the priesthood, I had developed a good poker face. 15 years, he continued. 15 years building something, and it crumbles in a week. Do you know what that's like, Father? "I do, actually," I said. "I was at Morgan Stanley for 12 years before becoming a priest." That got his attention. He turned fully toward me now, skepticism clear in his bloodshot eyes. "You're lying," I smiled. "God frowns on that, especially from his representatives. I was in derivatives, specialized in mortgage-backed securities, ironically enough." Michael studied me, looking for signs of deception. Finding none, he asked, "Why did you leave?" That was a complicated question, one I usually avoided. But something told me honesty was critical in this moment. I was good at it. Too good, perhaps. Made a lot of money for the firm, for my clients, for myself. Had the penthouse, the Hamptons house, the whole package, and I was completely empty inside. Michael looked away. I had struck a nerve. Then the market took a tumble in 2001. Not like now, but bad enough. One of my clients lost everything. He called me frantic. I gave him the usual lines about market recovery, staying the course. Found out the next day he'd taken his own life. Michael's shoulders tensed. His wife called me, not to blame me, though she had every right to, but to give me his note. He had apologized to her, to his kids, and to me. Can you believe that? He apologized to me for disappointing me with his investment. I paused, feeling the familiar pain rise in my chest, even after all these years. That broke me, Michael. Made me realize I had been complicit in a system that valued profits over people, that I had lost sight of what truly matters. Michael was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely audible. "I've lost $3 billion of other people's money," I nodded. That's a heavy burden. My clients trusted me. My employees trusted me. I promised them security, prosperity. Now some of them have nothing. Yes, I said simply. There was no point in minimizing the gravity of the situation. How do you live with that kind of failure? He asked, and I could hear the genuine question beneath the despair. One day at a time, I replied, and by trying to make amends where you can. He laughed humorlessly. I can't give them back their money. It's gone. There are other ways to make amends, Michael. He looked at me skeptically. I could see his mind working, the financier calculating possibilities. Come walk with me, I suggested. He hesitated, then nodded. We walked in silence for several minutes. The park was quieter than usual, as if the city itself was holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. You know what the worst part is? Michael finally said. I saw it coming. Not the whole collapse, but enough warning signs. I started to shift some investments, hedge our positions, but then the pressure came from my partners, from shareholders, from my own ego. So I doubled down instead, told myself it was just a temporary correction. Pride, I said. It's a powerful force. Is that what the church calls it? He sounded genuinely curious. One of the 7 deadlies, I confirmed with a small smile. Though in my experience it's the root of most of the others. We reached a bench overlooking the lake and sat down. A family of ducks glided by, seemingly oblivious to the human catastrophe unfolding around them. When I was a banker, I continued, we called it irrational exuberance or market confidence. Fancier terms, same sin. For the first time, Michael smiled slightly. You really were one of us, weren't you? In many ways, I still am, just serving a different master now. He considered this. Does it help? Faith, I mean. It was my turn to consider carefully. It doesn't make life easier if that's what you're asking, but it gives meaning to the suffering, purpose to the struggle. I don't know if I can believe in a God who would let this happen, Michael said, gesturing vaguely at the city beyond the park. God didn't cause this collapse, Michael. People did. People like us. He winced at the inclusion. The real question is not why God allowed it, but what we're going to do now, I continued. How we're going to help rebuild. Michael looked at me, desperation in his eyes. I don't know how to do anything else. Finance is all I know. Then use that knowledge differently, I suggested. The same skills that built wealth can be used to create opportunity for others. He laughed bitterly. Who would trust me now? Those who have no other options, I said. The people at the margins who never had access to financial knowledge or resources. Michael was quiet, contemplating. I could see the banker's mind working, running calculations and scenarios. There's a community center near my church, I continued. People there are losing their homes because they don't understand the predatory loans they signed. They need someone who knows the system from the inside. You want me to be some kind of financial missionary? His tone was skeptical, but I could hear a note of interest. I want you to use your gifts to serve rather than to profit, I clarified. The expertise you have is valuable, Michael, just not in the way you've been using it. He looked out across the park. For the first time since our conversation began, his posture relaxed slightly. I wouldn't even know where to start. Start by coming to the center tomorrow. Just listen to their stories. The rest will follow. He nodded slowly, not committing, but not refusing either. Progress. We sat in companionable silence for a while. The sun began to set, casting long shadows across the grass. I should go, Michael said finally. My wife has been calling. I've been ignoring her. I nodded. Call her back. She's probably worried. He stood, straightening his expensive suit by habit. Thank you, Father Thomas. Will I see you tomorrow at the center? I asked. Noon. He hesitated, then nodded once. Noon. I watched him walk away, his posture straighter, his step more purposeful. I wasn't naive. I knew one conversation couldn't heal all wounds or solve all problems, but it could be a beginning. I sat on that bench until the park lights came on, praying for Michael, for all those affected by the crisis, and for myself, because the truth was, our conversation had stirred up memories I had tried to bury. Let me tell you something I rarely admit. When I left Wall Street, it wasn't just because of my client's suicide. That was the catalyst, yes, but there was more to it. I had become addicted to the lifestyle, the power, the prestige, the adrenaline of making million-dollar decisions. When I walked away, I didn't just leave a job. I left an addiction. Every day I still feel the pull. The temptation to return to that world of immediate gratification, of measurable success. The priesthood is different. You plant seeds and may never see them grow. You speak words into a void and trust they find the right heart. It requires a different kind of faith. As I sat there in the growing darkness, I wondered if Michael was like me, if beneath his despair was a man desperate not just for redemption, but for purpose, for something bigger than quarterly profits and shareholder value. I didn't expect Michael to show up the next day. When noon came and went, I wasn't surprised, just disappointed. I had seen something in him, a potential for transformation. I was in my office when Maria, our receptionist, knocked on my door. "Father, there's someone here to see you." Michael stood in the doorway, no longer in his expensive suit, but in jeans and a button-down shirt. He looked like he hadn't slept. "I'm sorry I'm late," he said. "I had to take care of some things." Relief washed over me. "You're here now, that's what matters." "What?" He stepped into my modest office, taking in the simple furnishings, the worn books on the shelves. "This is different from Morgan Stanley," he remarked. I laughed. "The compensation package isn't quite as attractive, but the benefits are eternal." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "So, where's this community center?" We walked the few blocks to the center, a converted warehouse that served as a food bank, job training facility, and general gathering place for the neighborhood. As we approached, we saw a crowd gathered outside. People were holding signs, "Save our homes," and "Stop the foreclosures." Michael stopped. "You didn't tell me there was a protest." "I didn't know," I said honestly. "But it's not surprising. 3 families in the neighborhood received eviction notices yesterday." He looked uncomfortable. "Maybe this isn't a good idea." "On the contrary," I said. "This is exactly where you need to be." As we neared, I recognized Rosa, a grandmother who had been a pillar of the community for decades. She was leading the chants, her voice strong despite her 70 years. "Rosa," I called out. "What's happening?" She turned, her face lighting up when she saw me. "Father Thomas, the bank is taking Mrs. Diaz's house, after 30 years, and the Johnsons too. We're trying to get someone to listen to us." I introduced Michael, careful to omit his last name and former occupation. "This is my friend Michael. He knows about finance and might be able to help." Rosa eyed him suspiciously. "You a lawyer?" "No," Michael said, "but I understand how banks work." She considered this, then nodded once. "Come inside. We're gathering there." The center was packed. Families, elderly residents, young people, all crowded into the main room. The fear was palpable, but so was the determination. Michael stood awkwardly at the edge of the room, clearly out of his element. I stayed beside him, watching as he took it all in. Rosa called the meeting to order. One by one, people stood to tell their stories. Mrs. Diaz, who had refinanced to pay for her husband's cancer treatments, now facing eviction. The Johnson family, who had been told they qualified for a loan modification, only to be denied at the last minute. Young couple with 3 children, their adjustable rate mortgage suddenly doubling their monthly payment. I watched Michael as he listened. At first, his face remained impassive, the professional mask he had perfected over years of high-stakes negotiations. But as the stories continued, I saw something change in his eyes. Recognition, understanding, and then anger. When Rosa asked if anyone had suggestions, Michael surprised me by raising his hand. She nodded to him. "Those loan modifications they're denying," he began hesitantly. "There's a formula they use to determine eligibility, but they're not applying it correctly." The room grew quiet, everyone's attention on him. "The banks don't want you to know this, but under the new emergency regulations, they have more flexibility than they're admitting. They're counting on you not knowing your rights." "And how do you know all this?" someone called out skeptically. Michael hesitated, then straightened his shoulders. "Because I used to work for them. I was an investment banker until very recently." A murmur ran through the crowd. I saw some people tense, hostility flashing in their eyes. I was part of the problem, Michael continued, his voice stronger now. I helped create some of these financial instruments that are now destroying your lives, and I'm sorry. The room was silent, everyone processing this unexpected confession. But now, if you'll let me, I want to help. I know how they think, how they calculate risk and reward. I know their weaknesses and their pressure points. Rosa stepped forward. Why would you want to help us? Michael looked at her directly. Because I need redemption, and because what's happening to you is wrong. I held my breath, watching this moment unfold. So much hung in the balance. After what seemed like an eternity, Rosa nodded. We will take help where we can get it. What do you suggest we do? For the next hour, Michael transformed. The defeated man from the park was gone, replaced by the confident financial strategist I imagined he had once been. He explained banking regulations in simple terms, outlined strategies for negotiation, identified leverage points they could use. The crowd listened, skeptical at first, then with growing interest and even hope. He answered their questions patiently, admitting when he didn't know something, promising to find out. As the meeting dispersed, people approached Michael individually, documents in hand, seeking his advice. He looked overwhelmed but engaged with each one, examining loan papers, making notes, explaining options. It was late evening when the last family left. Michael sank into a chair, exhausted but somehow energized. Thank you, I said, sitting across from him. He shook his head. No, thank you. I needed this. They need you, I replied simply. I don't know if I can fix any of this, he admitted. The system is broken in fundamental ways. We're not asking you to fix the system overnight, just to help these families, one case at a time. He nodded slowly. I can do that. That evening, as we walked back to the church, Michael was quiet, reflective. What happens now? He asked finally. Now you go home, get some rest, and come back tomorrow if you want to continue. Just like that, I smiled. Just like that. I have money, he said suddenly. Not as much as before. The market crash hit me too, but enough. We could set up a proper clinic. Get legal support, maybe even buy some properties before they foreclose, rent them back to the families at fair rates. I stopped, looking at him with surprise. That's a significant commitment. I need to do something meaningful with what I have left, he said simply. Otherwise, what's the point? In that moment, I saw the transformation beginning, the seed of purpose taking root. Let's start small, I suggested, one step at a time. He nodded. One step at a time. That night marked the beginning of a remarkable journey. Michael came back the next day and the day after that. He set up a makeshift office in the corner of the community center, meeting with families, reviewing their financial situations, making calls to banks, sometimes using his old connections, sometimes posing as a legal advisor. Within 2 weeks, he had helped stop 3 imminent foreclosures. Within a month, he had negotiated 10 loan modifications. Word spread, and people came from neighboring communities seeking his help. I watched him transform before my eyes. The arrogance melted away, replaced by humility and purpose. He worked tirelessly, often forgetting to eat or sleep. His wife, Caroline, began to join him, using her skills as a former marketing executive to organize community education workshops on financial literacy. There was one case in particular that changed everything. The Ramirez family, father, mother, 3 young children, and an elderly grandmother, had lived in their small house for 20 years. Ramirez had been injured in a construction accident, leaving him unable to work for months. They had fallen behind on their mortgage payments and were now facing eviction. Michael spent days reviewing their case, making calls, hitting walls at every turn. The bank was adamant. They were foreclosing and nothing would change that. I found him late one night, still at his desk, surrounded by papers, his face drawn with exhaustion. You need to rest, I told him. He shook his head. I'm missing something. There has to be a way. Sometimes there isn't, I said gently. We can't save everyone. He looked up at me, his eyes fierce. That's what we used to say on Wall Street. You can't save everyone. It was our excuse for not trying. I sat down across from him. Michael, you've been working non-stop for days. You're no good to anyone if you collapse." He ran a hand through his hair. "The grandmother, Maria. She reminds me of my own abuela. She raised me after my parents divorced. This house, it's everything to them. It's not just shelter, it's their history, their stability." I nodded. I had seen this transformation in Michael over the past weeks, the ability to see beyond numbers to the human lives they represented. "If I go back to the bank tomorrow with a counter-offer," he said, thinking aloud, "maybe bring in a community development organization as a partner." I smiled. "Go home. Sleep. The solution will come." He left reluctantly. The next morning he returned with renewed energy and a plan so innovative it left me speechless. He had contacted several of his former colleagues who still had capital and conscience, proposing a small investment fund to buy distressed properties at discount rates, then lease them back to the original owners with options to repurchase. "It's a win-win," he explained excitedly. "The investors get a reasonable return over time, and the families get to stay in their homes." "Will your colleagues go for it?" I asked skeptically. "3 already have. They're looking for ways to rebuild their reputations too." His eyes sparkled with the thrill of creation, the same energy that had once driven him to build complex financial instruments, now channeled toward healing rather than profit. The plan worked. The Ramirez family stayed in their home, along with 5 other families in similar situations. The investment fund grew, attracting capital from unexpected sources, including some of the very institutions that had caused the crisis in the first place. It wasn't all smooth sailing. There were setbacks, cases where even Michael's expertise couldn't overcome the ruthless efficiency of the financial system. There were days when the weight of responsibility overwhelmed him, when the memories of his former life haunted him. On one such day, about 6 months after our meeting in the park, I found him sitting alone in the church, staring at the altar. "Crisis of faith?" I asked, sliding into the pew beside him. He smiled wryly. "Is it faith if I'm not sure what I believe?" "Faith isn't certainty, Michael. It's trust despite uncertainty." He nodded, considering this. "I received an offer yesterday from a hedge fund in Connecticut. They want me back in the game." My heart sank, though I tried not to show it. "That's a significant opportunity." "Triple what I used to make," he continued. "They say my inside knowledge of the crisis makes me valuable." I remained silent, letting him work through his thoughts. "6 months ago I would have jumped at it," he said, "even 3 months ago. But now—" "Now?" I prompted gently. "Now, I can't imagine going back. Despite everything, the long hours, the modest pay from the foundation grant, the frustration of fighting a system designed to win, I've never felt more alive." Relief washed over me. "The money would make your life easier," I acknowledged. "But it wouldn't make it better," he finished. "I finally understand what you meant that day in the park, about purpose giving meaning to suffering." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, the late afternoon light filtering through the stained glass, casting colorful patterns on the worn wooden pews. "I still don't know if I believe in God," Michael admitted, "but I believe in what we're doing. I believe it matters." "That's a start," I said with a smile. As months turned into years, our work evolved. What began as emergency intervention grew into systematic change. Michael's financial acumen, combined with my community connections, created something neither of us could have accomplished alone. We established a formal non-profit organization, Second Chance Financial Advocacy, with Michael as its director and me on the board. Caroline left her part-time marketing job to join full-time, bringing professional polish to our communications and outreach. The organization expanded beyond foreclosure prevention to comprehensive financial education, small business microloans, and advocacy for policy reform. Michael testified before City Council, then State Legislature, then Congress, his insider knowledge proving invaluable to lawmakers crafting new regulations. There were still difficult days. 3 years into our work, a former colleague of Michael's wrote a scathing opinion piece in the Wall Street Journal, calling him a traitor to capitalism and accusing him of exploiting the crisis for personal redemption. The piece went viral, bringing unwanted attention and scrutiny to our organization. I found Michael in his office after the article was published, staring out the window. "Are you okay?" I asked. He turned, his expression surprisingly calm. "Better than okay. Do you know what this means? They're scared of us, of what we represent." I hadn't thought of it that way, but he was right. Our model challenged the financial industry's narrative. We were proving that profit and social good could coexist, that finance could serve people rather than exploit them. Besides, he added with a wry smile, Jonathan and I were never friends. He's still bitter that I got the corner office at Goldman. His ability to laugh at himself was new, another sign of his transformation. The work wasn't always dramatic or newsworthy. Most days were filled with mundane tasks, reviewing documents, making phone calls, sitting in community meetings. But occasionally something would happen that reminded us why we were doing this. Like the day Mrs. Diaz, one of our first clients, whose home we had saved from foreclosure, came to the office with a large pot of arroz con gandules and an announcement. Her grandson had been accepted to college, the first in their family to go. He wanted to study finance, inspired by the work he had seen Michael doing in the community. Or the evening I performed the wedding ceremony for a young couple who had come to us a year earlier, drowning in student debt and unable to envision a future. Michael had helped them navigate income-based repayment options and create a financial plan. Now they were beginning their life together with hope rather than despair. These moments sustained us through the challenges, the economic downturns, the political obstacles, the personal attacks, the moments of doubt. 5 years after our meeting in the park, Michael and Caroline welcomed a daughter, Sophia. I had the honor of baptizing her in our small church with Rosa, now the operations manager of our organization, serving as godmother. After the ceremony, Michael pulled me aside, his eyes serious. "I want to ask you something," he said. "If anything ever happens to Caroline and me—" "Nothing will happen," I assured him. "But if it does," he insisted, "would you look after Sophia? Make sure she knows who we were, what we believed in?" I was stunned by the request. "Michael, I'm a priest. I don't know the first thing about raising a child." He smiled. "You helped raise me back to life. I trust you more than anyone." In the end, I agreed, touched beyond words by his faith in me. The financial crisis eventually eased, though its effects lingered in our community for years. Michael and Caroline never returned to their former lives. Instead, they expanded their non-profit organization, opening branches in other cities hit hard by the economic collapse. Over the years, they helped hundreds of families save their homes, thousands more understand their financial options, and even contributed to policy changes at the state level. Michael testified before Congress twice about predatory lending practices, his insider knowledge proving invaluable to legislators crafting new regulations. There was a particularly memorable hearing where a senator, one who had received substantial campaign contributions from the banking industry, tried to discredit Michael. "Mr. Harrington," the senator said, his tone condescending, "you yourself were part of the system you now criticize. Some might call that hypocrisy." Michael didn't flinch. "Senator, I prefer to call it growth. Yes, I was part of the problem. I acknowledge that. But does that disqualify me from being part of the solution? If anything, it makes me more qualified. I understand the system from the inside." The senator persisted. "But aren't you simply assuaging your own guilt through these charitable activities?" Michael considered this. "Perhaps initially. But if guilt drives someone to create positive change, is that such a bad thing? The families who still have homes don't care about my motivations. Results matter more than intentions." The exchange went viral, turning Michael into something of a folk hero among economic justice advocates. He was uncomfortable with the attention, but recognized its value to our cause. As for me, I continued my work at St. Mary's, grateful for the unlikely partnership that had emerged from that desperate day in Central Park. Michael and I remained close, two men from the same world who had found different paths to redemption. 8 years after our first meeting, I faced my own crisis. A routine medical checkup revealed a concerning shadow on my lung. Tests confirmed early-stage cancer, treatable, but requiring immediate surgery and months of recovery. I tried to keep the diagnosis private, not wanting to burden others, but Michael noticed my distraction during a board meeting and confronted me afterward. "What's going on, Thomas?" he asked directly. I hesitated, then told him. His face paled, but he immediately shifted into problem-solving mode. The banker still lived inside the Advocate. "Which hospital? Who's your doctor? We need a second opinion. I know someone at Memorial Sloan Kettering." "Michael," I interrupted, touched by his concern. "It's okay. I have good care. But I'm worried about the church, about our organization while I'm recovering." He placed a hand on my shoulder. "Let me handle that. You focus on getting well." True to his word, Michael arranged everything. He hired a retired priest to cover my parish duties, reorganized the non-profit's leadership to function in my absence, and even set up a rotation of community members to check on me daily during recovery. When I went into surgery, Michael and Caroline were in the waiting room. When I woke up groggy and in pain, Michael was reading beside my bed. "Important board documents," he explained, holding up a novel. "Thought I'd get some work done while you napped." During my months of recovery, I saw another side of Michael, the same fierce dedication that had once made him a Wall Street star, now directed toward ensuring my health and peace of mind. He brought me books, updated me on our cases, even arranged for the church choir to sing outside my apartment one evening when I was feeling particularly low. By the time I returned to full duties, I had a deeper understanding of our friendship. We had each saved the other in different ways. 10 years later, almost to the day of our first meeting, Michael and I sat on the same bench in Central Park. The autumn leaves were just as vibrant, the air just as crisp. "Do you ever regret it?" I asked him. "Leaving your old life behind?" He considered the question seriously, as he did all questions now. "I regret the harm I caused before, the people I hurt through my actions and inactions, but this path, no regrets." "Even with the salary cut?" I teased. He laughed. "Caroline and I have everything we need, and Sophia will grow up understanding value beyond money. That's worth more than any bonus." Michael's daughter was 9 now, whip-smart and compassionate, with her father's head for numbers and her mother's social conscience. She often came to the community center after school, helping seniors navigate online banking or explaining interest rates to teenagers in terms they could understand. "She might end up on Wall Street one day," I observed. "Maybe," Michael acknowledged. "But she'd go with different values, a different purpose. That's all we can hope for, that the next generation does better than we did." As we sat there, a young man in an expensive suit walked past us, his face tight with stress, his eyes fixed on his phone. Michael and I exchanged a knowing glance. "Should we say something?" Michael asked quietly. I shook my head. "His moment will come, just as yours did. And someone will be there for him," Michael added, "as you were for me." That's the thing about redemption. It's not a single moment, but a journey that continues long after the initial crisis has passed. Michael found his path that day in the park, but his true redemption came through the hundreds of lives he touched afterward. And mine? My redemption continues as well in every confession I hear, every mass I celebrate, every person I guide through their darkest moments. We are all works in progress, forever being shaped by our choices and our willingness to begin again. 2 years after our bench conversation, Michael faced his greatest challenge yet. A major bank, one we had frequently opposed in foreclosure cases, offered to fund an expansion of our program nationally, with one condition: Michael would need to tone down his advocacy work, particularly his criticism of certain lending practices. The amount was staggering, enough to help thousands more families. The board was split, with compelling arguments on both sides. Michael came to me, torn between pragmatism and principle. We walked through the church garden, the spring flowers just beginning to bloom. "What would you do?" he asked me. "Really?" I considered carefully. "I can't answer that for you, Michael, but I can ask you this. What would the Michael I met in the park want the Michael you are now to do?" He was quiet for a long time. Then he would say not to compromise, that principles matter more than scale, that sometimes the right path is harder but clearer. I nodded. "And what does the Michael you are now think?" Another long pause. "The same, but with more understanding of the complexities, the shades of grey. In the end, Michael declined the offer. Instead, he launched a smaller but more independent expansion, funded by a coalition of community foundations and ethical investors. It grew more slowly, but stayed true to its mission. The following year, the bank that had tried to co-opt us faced a major scandal involving the very practices Michael had refused to stop criticizing. Our independence gave us the moral authority to help shape the regulatory response. When Sophia turned 16, Michael and Caroline organized a party at the community center. The guest list was a living testament to the bridges they had built, former Wall Street colleagues alongside community activists, politicians next to local family businesses, children of all backgrounds playing together. During the celebration, Michael gave a speech that moved many to tears. He talked about transformation, about second chances, about finding purpose in unexpected places. And he spoke about me, words so generous I can hardly repeat them without embarrassment. But what stayed with me was what he said about his daughter. Sophia, you were born into privilege, not just financial privilege, though we've been blessed there too, but the privilege of purpose. Never take that for granted. There are people searching their whole lives for what makes their existence meaningful. If you've found it, hold on to it with both hands. I looked around the room as he spoke, at the community we had built together, at the lives intertwined in ways that would have seemed impossible that day in Central Park. I thought about how close we had come to losing Michael, how one conversation had changed not just his trajectory but that of countless others. There's a theological concept called the butterfly effect of grace, the idea that small acts of compassion can ripple outward in ways we never anticipate. That day in the park was such a moment, not because of anything special I did or said, but because Michael was ready to hear it, ready to transform his pain into purpose. Last month, as I celebrated my 20th anniversary as a priest, Michael gave me a gift, a small wooden box containing a stone from Bethesda Fountain. To remind you of where it all began, the card read, and how far we've come. That stone sits on my desk now next to my Bible and my prayer book, a reminder that redemption can begin in the most unexpected places, with the simplest of conversations. This morning, I received news that has me reflecting even more deeply on our journey. Michael's financial advocacy organization has been awarded a prestigious national honor for its decade of service. The ceremony will be in Washington next month. Michael called to ask if I would attend with him and his family. I can't accept this without you there, he said. None of it would have happened if you hadn't stopped that day. I tried to deflect, uncomfortable with taking credit. You would have found your way eventually. Maybe, he acknowledged, or maybe not. Some gifts we only recognize in retrospect. As I prepare to join Michael in Washington, I'm struck by how God weaves our lives together, in patterns we can't possibly foresee. The banker and the priest, an unlikely friendship that saved not just one life, but rippled outward to touch thousands. When I speak with young seminarians or mentor new priests, they often ask about my success in ministry. How did I build such a vibrant community? How did I inspire such transformation? I tell them the truth. I simply showed up. I was present. I offered what I had. My experience, my understanding, my willingness to walk alongside someone in their darkest moment. That's all any of us can do, really. Show up, be present, offer what we have. There's a passage in Scripture that says, "To whom much is given, much will be required." Michael and I had been given much, education, opportunity, privilege. The crisis revealed how hollow those gifts were when used only for self-advancement. It was only in giving them away that we found their true value. I think about that young man in the expensive suit we saw in the park. I wonder where he is now, if he's found his purpose. I pray someone was there for him when his moment of crisis came, as I was there for Michael. Because that's how redemption works, not through grand gestures or dramatic conversions, but through small moments of connection. One person reaching out to another saying, "I see you, I hear you, you're not alone." Last week I returned to Bethesda Fountain for the first time in many months. The autumn leaves were turning, just as they had been that day with Michael. I sat on our bench watching people pass, tourists taking photos, joggers on their morning run, business people hurrying to meetings. I wondered how many of them were carrying burdens no one could see. How many were one conversation away from despair or hope. A young woman sat down beside me, clearly distressed, wiping tears from her eyes. She didn't notice me at first, lost in her thoughts. "Beautiful view, isn't it?" I said. The same words I had spoken to Michael all those years ago. She looked up, startled, then nodded. "Yes," she said. "I come here to think." "So do I replied. "I'm Thomas." She hesitated, then said, "I'm Jennifer." "Would you like to talk?" I asked. "I'm a good listener." Jennifer studied me for a moment, noticing my collar, then took a deep breath. "I just lost my job," she said. "Finance. The company's downsizing." I nodded, feeling an echo of that long-ago conversation. "I know something about that world," I told her. "I worked in finance before becoming a priest." Her eyes widened in surprise. "Really? That's an unusual career change." I smiled. "Let me tell you a story," I said. "It begins right here, actually, about 12 years ago, with a banker and a priest." And so the cycle of redemption continues. One story flowing into another, one life touching the next. This is how we build the kingdom of God, not all at once, but person by person, conversation by conversation, moment by moment. As I finish telling Jennifer about Michael, I see something change in her eyes. Not a dramatic conversion, not an instant transformation, but a spark, a possibility. "Do you think," she begins hesitantly, "do you think your friend Michael might need someone with experience in corporate finance for his organization?" I smile. "I think he just might. Let me make a call." And so it goes. The stone thrown into the water 12 years ago, still creating ripples. Lives intersecting in ways we could never plan or predict. Divine appointments disguised as chance encounters. This is my testimony. This is my faith. That no one is beyond redemption. That purpose can be found in the darkest moments. That sometimes the most important ministry happens not in the pulpit or the confessional, but on a park bench on an autumn day. I've learned to look for God not in the dramatic or the miraculous, but in these quiet intersections of lives. In the banker who becomes an advocate. In the priest who rediscovers his calling. In the young woman whose professional crisis might lead to her greatest purpose. As we prepare to celebrate the anniversary of our community center next month, I've been reflecting on all we've accomplished. The homes saved, the families stabilized, the policies changed. It's impressive when viewed from a distance, but up close it's really just 1,000 small acts of redemption, 1,000 conversations, like the one Michael and I had that day. Michael's daughter Sophia is applying to colleges now, 17 years old, and already more certain of her purpose than I was at twice her age. She wants to study public policy and finance, to help build systems that work for everyone, not just the privileged few. "You and Dad inspired me," she told me recently. "You showed me that it's possible to change things even when the problems seem too big." I wonder sometimes what would have happened if I had taken a different path that day in the park. If I had been too busy, too tired, too absorbed in my own concerns to notice the man at the railing, how many lives would be different now? But that's not a useful line of thought. We can't change the paths not taken. We can only be grateful for the moments when we did choose correctly, when we did stop, when we did reach out. There's a question I'm often asked when I share this story. How did you know what to say to him that day? How did you find the right words? The truth is, I didn't. I simply spoke from my own experience, my own struggles, my own journey from darkness to light. I offered not wisdom, but authenticity, not answers, but presence. That's all any of us can offer, really. Our true selves, our stories, our willingness to walk alongside another in their pain. Tomorrow, Michael and I are meeting with a group of banking executives who want to establish a similar program in their communities. It's taken years, but the financial industry is slowly beginning to recognize its responsibility to the people it serves. Michael will speak about the practical aspects, how the program works, its financial sustainability, its measurable outcomes. I will speak about the human element, the lives changed, the dignity restored, the communities rebuilt. Together, we offer a vision of what's possible when finance serves humanity rather than the other way around, when profit is balanced with purpose. when we recognize that our responsibility extends beyond shareholders to the common good. I'm under no illusion that we've solved the fundamental problems of our economic system. The same forces that created the crisis of 2008 are still at work. Greed still motivates too many decisions. Short-term thinking still prevails over long-term sustainability. But I've seen enough change, in individuals like Michael, in organizations like ours, in communities like this one, to believe that transformation is possible. Not all at once, but gradually. Person by person. Decision by decision. As I prepare for bed tonight, I'll say my prayers as I always do. For my parish, for our community, for Michael and his family. For all those still struggling in a system that too often values wealth over worth. And I'll give thanks for that day in Central Park, for the courage to approach a stranger in distress, for the grace that flowed through our conversation, for the ripples that continue to spread outward, touching lives we may never even know. This is the miracle of redemption, not that we are saved once and for all in a single moment, but that we are continually being saved and are continually invited to participate in the saving of others. Michael once asked me in a moment of doubt, "How do you know if you've done enough? If you've made amends for the harm you've caused?" I told him what I believe to be true. We can never fully know the impact of our actions, either the harmful ones or the healing ones. All we can do is move forward with intention, with purpose, with love. That's what I see in Michael now, a man moving forward with intention, purpose, and love. A man whose worst moment became the doorway to his best self. And isn't that the heart of the gospel? That our failures, our sins, our darkest hours need not define us. That redemption is always possible. That grace finds us exactly where we are, but loves us too much to leave us there. As I look at the stone from Bethesda fountain on my desk, I'm reminded of the fountain's name, Bethesda, the healing pool in Scripture where the afflicted waited for the waters to be stirred by an angel. That day in the park the waters were stirred. 2 lives were changed. And through those changed lives, countless others have been touched. This is how God works in our world, not through pronouncements from the heavens or dramatic interventions, but through human encounters, through conversations on park benches, through presence in moments of crisis, through ordinary people who choose to stop, to see, to listen, to care. I don't know what tomorrow holds for our community, for our work, for Michael and his family. The future is as uncertain now as it was that day by the fountain. But I know this. Whatever comes, we will face it together. The banker and the priest. An unlikely friendship that became a partnership in healing. And in that partnership, I have found my greatest ministry. Not in the pulpit or the confessional, but in walking alongside a soul in transition, in witnessing transformation, in participating in redemption. So if you ask me what I believe after all these years, after all I've seen and experienced, I will tell you this. I believe in the God who finds us at the railing, looking down into the depths of our despair. I believe in the God who speaks through unexpected encounters, who redeems our worst moments, who weaves our broken threads into a tapestry of purpose. I believe in the God who specializes in second chances, who takes our failures and transforms them into foundations for a new beginning, who sees not just who we are, but who we might become. This is my testimony. This is my faith. This is the story of the banker and the priest, and of the God who brought us together on a park bench and changed our lives forever.